Welcome in, everybody. Today is the 15th of June, 2020. It is Monday. My name's Carey Holzman. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I appreciate you guys have tuned in and are joining in the chat. We got a lot of people already in the chat before I've even started. Hello to my friends in blue there, including Wayne Lawrence and Luke Greenia, Vern Mahorney, and AORS team Jeffrey Memorino, Michael Dane, Jim Kenny. Welcome in, everybody. It's good to see everybody in there. Joseph Neal and Randall Doms. And yeah, we'll just give it a minute here for people to join us. Today, I'm going to be doing a video comparison review of the Lian Li TU-100 mini ITX case versus the the new and improved replacement for it called the TU-150. And it's quite different. This is not a minor retooling of the factory. This is a major difference, and we'll go over the pros and cons because neither case is perfect, and both cases have their attractive qualities as well. I'll share with you what I find personally to be something more positive about the case, as well as some of the areas where I feel the case lets me down. Now, anytime we do a review like this, it's really not factually based. It's based on subjectivity of the person that has certain priorities or requirements that are unique to their needs. So I want you to bear that in mind as I talk about pros and cons of one case versus the other. I'm simply talking about my opinion, and it has absolutely nothing to do with verifiable fact when it comes to design preferences. And that's pretty much what today is going to be about. At the end of the day, either one of these cases will do the job as advertised and is worth what they're selling for, in my opinion. But there's always room for improvement, and there's always something to complain about. And so that's what I'm going to do today. Well, I will focus on the positive as well. Neither case is bad and neither case is the best. However, we'll get into more details of exactly why I'm saying that here in just a moment. Ramsey Moardi has contributed $5. He says, hey everyone, the Lian Li is back. Cool. Well, there is another Lian Li case coming up as well that was sent to me from Ryan in Nevada. It's a Landcool 2, which is a very different case. It's it's either a full tower or a mid-tower case. Also from Lian Li, and we'll be reviewing that, or building in it rather, soon. I don't know when yet, so I'm just going to say soon. So behind me are the cases. This is the original TU-100 case from Lian Li in silver. Not a lot here to absorb with regards to sort of what you see is what you get. Nothing's hidden, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You've got a power button, no reset button, your front port audio and your front USB 3.0 right down here. It's also very, very lightweight, and it's quite small. I'm not sure if you can see just how much larger the TU-150 is. Now, the TU-150 replaces this. You can't buy these anymore. You know, places like Amazon and stuff, they're not for sale. I mean, somebody's probably selling one somewhere, but I'm just saying, like, regular computer retailers don't stock this because it hasn't been made in some time. This has replaced it. So here we have this handle, and if you look at how the handle was made, there's no real way to hide it. It's just kind of an eyesore, and you just treat it like luggage, I guess. You know, you just accept the fact it's got a handle. One of the improvements they made on the TU-150 is that the handle is spring-loaded and it can be hidden away, so it's not such a distraction. And a simple pull-up on the handle, it springs up and locks into position. Well, when I say it locks, what I mean to say is it's not loose like this. It doesn't wobble around. It's pretty sturdy until it's pressed down. And I think that's a great improvement and well thought out. You'll also see that they moved the buttons, and you know, you had a power button here, and then you had the rest of your I/O down at the bottom. That, I think, is just bizarre. In my opinion, the front I/O should all be together, which is what they did here. They took it from the bottom and combined the power switch, as they should have, and moved it all up to the top on the 150. So here we've got our power button. We've got a USB Type-C connector here, as well as two USB 3s. Even though they're black, they are USB 3. Your standard front port headphone and microphone jack. And they've also included the reset button, which they had removed on the TU-100 here. Now, they have a tradition of keeping these cases tool-free. I don't know if that's with intention or if it's purely coincidence, but Lian Li, when they do their mini ITX builds, at least with the two I've got in front of me, they don't require a screwdriver to open them up. In the TU-100 case, there are switches. And I'm not quite sure how well you can see these switches, but they're right back here. And if I just pull the switch that direction, the panel comes off. And thankfully, it doesn't just come flying off, or it probably would have hit the floor. So it does still kind of stay a little bit locked in, but that's how you can at least get it started. And then it's got metal, not plastic, but metal tabs that stick out that go into these connectors, much like some kitchen cabinetry or other types of cabinetry might do. And you see, you don't have a whole lot of room to work with in here. I've left the original power supply and optical drive in there because I'm going to reuse this in another build. But that'll give you an idea of just how much space you've got. Pretty much just enough space for that mini ITX board. As for installing like a 2.5-inch solid state drive, down on the bottom, the power supply cables are kind of covering it up. But down here, there is a holder, the metal's bent up, to hold a 2.5-inch solid state drive. Now, if I'm building a mini ITX system today, or really any system today, I don't want to use anything but M.2 storage. I want to avoid the cabling, especially in a small case like this. I want to keep everything onto the motherboard as possible, reduce all the amount of cables that I possibly can. Going with a modular power supply would be ideal in a case like this because airflow is going to be an issue, as it would be on most mini ITX cases. One of the benefits about its big brother is it's quite a bit larger, and that allows for much better airflow. And much like the TU-100, much like its little brother, rather than pushing a button to release a panel, you'll see these little tabs that stick out right here. There's a tab on each side, and if you grab that tab and just pull it away, the whole panel comes off, with once again being a completely toolless design. Now, in here is a system we built a couple of weeks ago, and the cable management's been done on it. And let me just set the glass panel down. This glass panel probably weighs a third as much as this entire case with a power supply in it, just the way it is. So this adds quite a bit of weight, and there is a significant weight difference between the TU-150 and the TU-100. Normally, I wouldn't care too much about the weight of a computer, but these are intended to be portable. They're intended for you to carry around. And this thing probably weighs, all fully loaded like this, well, I don't know, but I'm going to guess it's got to be around 25 pounds. This case, when it's fully loaded, is probably closer to about 16, I'd say 16 to 18 pounds. This is probably 22 to 26 pounds. It's kind of hard to determine without a scale, but the case, when it's empty, is significantly heavier. And then adding the glass, remember, I'm lifting it right now without the glass. The glass is probably adding 1.5 pounds, just the glass alone. So you can see now the difference between the two cases on the insides. If we set them side by side, this one is obviously going to be easier to work inside of. You've got more room to get your hands in there. And the glass panel is blacked out. Right up in this top corner, you'll see it's blacked out. And that's because they know your power supply is going to go right there, and that's where all your cables are going to be ugly. And so they've blacked it out to try and make the improvement aesthetically more pleasing when the glass panel's on it. There's no RGB in this. It's not lighting up, although we could have added some RGB if we wanted to. We could use the Stealth Wraith cooler in this case. It's an AMD build, and I'm sure it would look just fine through the smoked glass case, or smoked glass side panel. On this build, you wouldn't see anything because it's just completely solid, right? So if we had the Wraith cooler in there, for example, that would be a waste. We wouldn't be able to see it. This case is also a little deeper, so you got to worry a bit on this case with the depth of the cooler that you're using on your CPU. Your cooler may hit up against the back of the power supply, and then your build is going to come to a dead stop if that happens. You're going to be stuck. So when you're going to build a mini ITX system, it's really important you do your research in determining size when it comes to the depth of the cooler. It also matters if you're buying a video card, that your video card won't exceed the length that's allowable in the case. Once again, this case is longer. I do believe a full-size graphics card will fit into the new and improved. I don't know if it's fair to call it new and improved. It's new. It's the TU-150. And again, this is the big brother and replacement of this. This is basically the next evolution of what this was. So in theory, what Lian Li did is they said, let's fix everything we did with this one wrong and let's do it again, but do it better. I do believe that was their philosophy, but they still could have done more. So there's a couple of things I don't like about each one of these cases. On the black case here, on the TU-150, I don't like this. There's a little screw here, and all the cards that you plug into the board secure on the outside of the case. Now, there are mid-tower and full-tower cases that do this as well, and I am not pleased with that design choice. The case should be large enough for us to remove the screws from inside of the case in order to secure them from theft or from just ease of working on the system. This adds another piece. This piece right here is a piece that most cases don't have. It's one more screw, it's one more thing to lose, it's one more thing you've got to put back. It's completely unnecessary for a computer to have that if the case is designed properly. It leaves no benefit. I don't see why any case manufacturer would choose to shorten the length of the case by half an inch in order to extend out the ability to secure down your PCI cards externally. It is bizarre. It creates more complexity in the assembly line process, which adds to the cost of the case. It adds to the complexity of building the machine. It also means that if you were to back this up against a wall, if you were to put this on the ground and as you were trying to move it away, you would probably gouge right into your wall because that piece sticks out further than anything else on the case. And so it'd be very easy to just punch a nice little slot into your wall by too aggressively pushing this back or hitting it with your foot. It's just a really bad idea, and it's one I'd like to see phased out and never used again by any manufacturer ever again. That's what I'd like. I don't think I want to get what I like. But I will tell you that if I see a case design that has this, I will not buy that case. Anytime you ever see me on this channel working on a case where the PCI slots have to secure externally, then that either belongs to a customer or I didn't realize it when I purchased the case. You won't see me purchase it again. Never again. I don't care how good the rest of the case is. That right there, that's end game for me. That's not negotiable. It's not excusable. It offers no benefit. And I just find it really upsetting that case manufacturers would choose to do something so financially unwise and so inconsiderate to the PC builder and owner of the computer. That being said, this case has a unique problem that I've never seen. Well, I won't say I've never seen it, but this is pretty consistent. I want to zoom the camera in and I want to show you what happens if I bring this camera down. Let's bring it down. Let's put it right about there, and a little further down. And I want you to look at the top of my cabinet. And as I slide the case, I'm not putting any pressure, I'm just going to slide the case. Do you see these lines? I'm just going to move the case around. Are you starting to see what it's doing to my countertop? You guys seeing it yet? All I'm doing is sliding. There's no friction. It's gliding very easily across the surface of my counter. And in doing so, look what it's done to my countertop. So that is a sign of a very, very bad design. That suggests to me that whoever designed this case didn't really think out the little feet very well, nor did they utilize it. Because if they would have utilized this case and seen that it did that, this would have been number one thing they would have changed in manufacturing. I mean, how hard is that to change that piece to something that won't leave marks on the counter? Also, when I held it up, I just realized there's two, if I get this out of the way, there are two places for 2.5-inch drives down there. There's a 2.5-inch drive tray and another 2.5-inch drive tray. And if you want to remove them, that's what these screws are for. You can take those drive trays out if you wanted to free up a little more room in the case. The only thing that's a savior is that those marks are not permanent. So once again, if we get you a nice zoom in here, I want you to take a look at my counter. And I'm just going to grab some Windex. And what we'll do is just grab a paper towel. But you have to understand, this is temporary, because the minute I put the case back on it, it immediately starts marking my counter again. So the idea that I should have to buy a mat or put coasters underneath a computer, that is something unacceptable. There's no reason that those feet had to be used. There's nothing specific about those feet that can only be used on that case. It was simply bad engineering, bad choices, and not proper quality control or testing. This is what happens when a company doesn't use their own products. When a company makes anything, and whatever that thing is they make, they don't use, it often results in these bizarre problems and nonsensical design choices, whether it's having the PCI slots external or having the feet leaving marks on the counter. It's suggesting to me that nobody in the company really cares. This is not uncommon. When I've worked for companies where the people involved in the product have no interest in the product. It's just their job. When I worked at Newegg, nobody wanted to watch the videos they made. They would produce the videos, they would edit the videos, they would supervise the manufacturing of the videos, and then when the video was all done and it needed somebody to watch it for errors or omissions or improvements, nobody, not a single person in charge of that department watched any of the completed videos. What are you going to do? And so when you wonder, like, well, how can this be so bad? It's because there are people that clock in, they do their job, and they clock out. They don't honestly care about the quality of the product. They've got no pride that their name is going on it. It's just done. There's no sense proofreading what was written. It's been written, I'm done, release it, and it results in some of the worst documentation you'll ever see from companies. That's why documentation is so bad. Nobody reads it. Nobody proofreads it. Or the people who proofread it, they're just glancing it over. They're not actually going through step by step. One of the things I found when I write an article is when I read it back to myself, I don't notice the errors. But if I read it out loud, as though I were presenting it, then suddenly I realize where the word "and" is missing. Or it's weird the way the brain works. So when you're thinking you're quality controlling something by just looking at it instead of using it and instead of going through it step by step, you're actually not doing a very good job. You might as well not be doing anything at all. You might as well just skip right past it and give it your stamp of approval. A cursory glance is worthless and a waste of time. The idea that you're saying, well, I've looked at it and therefore I'm approving it, is false. Until you go through each step, read it out loud so that it makes sense to somebody who doesn't have any technical background, then and only then will you end up with good technical documentation. The same can be said with good case design. If you build inside of this case, you will find there are areas that could be improved. One of those areas is cable management. Now, the silver case, the TU-100, has zero cable management. On the TU-150, they did a little bit to help you. However, the placement of the power supply results in no possible cable management allowed for the cables to go from the back of this power supply to this motherboard. Where can you hide those cables? It's just not well thought out. Now look, if you're going to say this case design doesn't allow for cable management to be hidden for the very reason you said, then I want to know why you put a glass panel on it. Who decided this? Did somebody say, look, we realize that there's no good cable management in this design, but we don't want to spend the money to redesign it. We also know cases with glass panels sell better to the consumers because it's a current trend in computer case manufacturing that home buyers, not businesses, home buyers are buying more cases with windows than cases without them. So how do we take advantage of this? We're going to throw a case window on it. Well, do you want to throw a case window on it when you haven't really given the cable management any attention? Yes. Why? Because I'm in management and I don't understand what cable management is. I understand when I look at graphs and numbers, I see cases with windows sell better, put a window on it. That is the level that we deal with in corporate America in management, where you have people who understand sales numbers and analytics, but have no concept or clue about the actual product they are selling or in charge of. The only reason Susan Wojcicki, or whatever her name is in charge of YouTube is because she was friends or neighbors with the Google guys, with Larry and Sergey. She was friends with that. She let them use her garage. She's not a CEO. She's never been a CEO before. And she has no clue what it is to be a YouTube creator. She will go on and she'll talk to the media and she'll do interviews and she'll talk about the problems with free speech and, hate videos, but she's not a content creator. She has no clue the amount of hostility content creators have to deal with because the YouTube platform not only allows it, but encourages it, and she is clueless. So in my world, I'd like to see somebody in charge of every company who eats their own dog food, who says, you know what, I am a creator, and I understand what my frustrations are. So you probably share the same frustrations. I also understand analytics, and I understand shareholder value. It seems to me that's a pretty rare CEO to find. Most CEOs are typically all about shareholder value and nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if the product is crap. It doesn't matter if the product is dangerous. It depends on what the liability to the company is and how many units you're selling per quarter and whether or not you're meeting your quarterly goals. That's it. The product, the customers, that's all to the wayside to what really matters. And to me, that's completely backwards. When you care about your product and your customers, the quarterly results solve themselves. They're not something you need to focus on. And it is a problem that is worldwide that probably isn't going to end anytime soon. So what I'm getting at with all of this is it's unlikely that we're going to see a really smart case design from a corporation. It's possible, but very unlikely. Every case I've ever worked on pretty much has some poor design built into it, some poor design choices. And I'm not going to sit here and name manufacturers because they all are part of it. They've each dropped the ball in some way, shape, or form that suggests to me they've never actually built in the case before. Now, how can I prove this? The Ncase M1 is a crowdsourced computer case design made by builders for builders in a community where they basically point out each other's flaws and make recommendations on how to resolve those flaws. And what you end up with is a near perfect design for a mini ITX computer case. I have the new Ncase M1 version 6. And you can see there's been 6 versions, meaning even when the case builders themselves all get together and create this think tank, there's still room for improvement. There's still somebody else who comes along and says, well, you know, if you change this and if you do that. There may have been reasons version 1 lacked some of the features of version 6 because of the costs. Perhaps somebody said, instead of using screws, why don't we use magnets? And they could have said, well, the cost of manufacturing the magnets to get them in the size that we need them and get them attached raises the cost, and, you know, maybe that's the reason why. It may not be that it was an original idea for version 6. It may be an idea in version 1 that financially wasn't ready yet. I can't tell you for sure. Maybe we can bring on the person who's created or founded the Ncase idea. And interestingly enough, once they came up with this design, they had to find a manufacturer to make this case. And the manufacturer they found that agreed to do it is Lian Li. And it's not by any coincidence, I'm sure, that Lian Li has adopted many of the design features of the Ncase, or the Ncase M1. I think that's a welcome thing. The fact that NZXT likes to have the front panel audio header all in one plug, why isn't every case manufacturer doing that now? This is not 1994. It's time. I like that NZXT gives you a little plug-in if you want to break those out into separate cables. Why can't everybody do that? Why is that a unique design feature strictly to NZXT? Why is it that ASUS and Gigabyte, the motherboard manufacturers, include that little Q connector, or ASUS calls it the, Gigabyte calls it the G connector. So Gigabyte and ASUS include with the motherboards the front panel header plug that you can plug those 4 wires into for your reset switch, your power switch, your hard drive LED, your power LED. Why is that coming from the motherboard manufacturer? That should be a part of the case, and furthermore, it should already be built in. Just like your USB. We used to have to plug each little USB cable in. With USB, there were 9 cables that had to be plugged in. 9 individual cables. Sometimes 8, sometimes 9, because there was a ground wire. And they all had to go in a specific order. And if you got it backwards, you could toast your USB flash drive. You could toast anything you plugged into it. If you put the voltage wire in the wrong spot, you could completely fry whatever you plugged into your USB port. And you had to plug each wire on individually by hand. Well, those days are long behind us. When I go to plug in USB 3.0, I just grab the connector and I plug it in. Heck, when I plug in USB 2.0, I grab the connector, I plug it in. The days of having to align the 4 wires, positive and negative, and the data transmission and data sending for the top row, and then the same exact cables again, but they have a little number 2 after them. And you got to keep all the 1s together and all the 2s together, and you've got to keep them all in the right order, or it isn't going to work. Why? Why was that ever released to the public that way? They've corrected it. But why haven't they corrected it on the front panel I/O? Every motherboard you see me work on here, with the exception of some mini ITX systems, that little front panel I/O on all the micro ATX and ATX boards follows the exact same format as it has for 20 years. And yet case manufacturers are still requiring us to separate out the positive and negative on the power cable, which is entirely unnecessary, to plug in the reset switch separately, the hard drive LED separately, and the power switch separately. It's all stupid. At this point, case manufacturers should exercise a little more consideration to the computer builders, and give people a reason to buy their case besides, oh, look how shiny and pretty it is. That's my opinion. Speaking of the Ncase M1, let me go grab it. I've got it sitting out in the garage, so bear with me. I wasn't planning on grabbing it, but now that you got me talking about it, I am kind of curious. I think it looks exactly the same as version 1. I think the changes are all pretty minor, but I could be wrong. The case was on back order, and I put my email address in and said, email me when you're ready to accept orders. And within 3 days, I got an email saying we're ready to accept orders. That's how quick that was. So by comparison, this is the Ncase N1. And as I mentioned, this case is crowdsourced with regards to the design. You can have a full-size graphics card in here. You can have a liquid cooler, storage. Basically, every possible quarter-inch of this case is usable. Oh, look, there's a box inside of my box. That's all right. I guess that's one way to get a doubled wall box. Just use 2 boxes. That's done in order to prevent damage in shipping, right? If the box is twice as thick. So I don't really have a complaint about that, but it's weird. And upside down. That's weird. Oh, and damaged. It's got a big old dent in it. I wonder if you order Russian nesting dolls, if they come boxed like that. So, fully designed in the USA, built in Taiwan, the Ncase M1 is very unique, or I should say was very unique. It has been duplicated by other case manufacturers in other ways. My nephew introduced me to the Dan case, D-A-N, which looks like another visualization of micro ATX that seems inspired by the Ncase M1. Because the box is damaged up at the top, I want to inspect the case to ensure we've got no damage here. So far it's looking good. This is very lightweight. I think this is all aluminum, and it probably weighs maybe 2.5 pounds, maybe. It's very, very light. If a case is meant to be portable, as mini ITX generally implies, then weight should be an important consideration. Putting glass on it is the exact opposite. Glass is heavier and thicker than aluminum that's used on the Ncase M1. And so as a result, this probably weighs as much as or less than that glass panel, I would imagine. So I just want to inspect this for any potential damage. We'll take a quick look all the way around, spin it around. Looks good. Everything looks pretty. You can even put an external reservoir for liquid cooling. That's what those two, sometimes you guys might find these holes in the back of a case. That's the, for the enthusiast that wants to do their own open loop cooler. There's always a serial number on the back. Or I guess it's not a serial, it's M1 version 6.1. I thought that was a serial number. I don't think I've got serial number 1. I'm pretty sure I'm not the first one to have one. Maybe they stopped doing that. This case, again, is also toolless, and as you can tell, if you look through my video library, and I'll be sure to add a link I built in this case, in version 1 of this case. So I'm very anxious to build in version 2. You'll see there's no DVD drive slot up here. And that looks like maybe something they've taken away. Inside, you can see there's brackets and holders for 3.5-inch drives, 2.5-inch drives. Power supply is going to mount right up here in this corner, and then a little extension cord connects to the back right here. There's a cord that plugs into the back of the power supply. That way they're not forced to put the power supply back here. This is the kind of out-of-the-box thinking I'm talking about. Look at the feet on the bottom. These are rubberized feet. Look at the holes throughout the case. Is there any part of this case that doesn't have holes in it? So obviously cooling was a very deep consideration. And furthermore, I'm just noticing by looking at the bottom, this appears to be a magnetic filter that comes off, which is well thought out, lots of room to breathe in there. And again, when you're dealing with a mini ITX build, you're talking about putting a lot of components very tightly together, just like a laptop, and that's going to be a battle with heat. The box that the M1 comes with includes some washers, I'm guessing, for 3.5-inch drive installations. There are some brackets. Look at this. This is a full-size ATX power supply bracket. That tells me that they've adapted this in some way to a full-size ATX power supply, which I did not know they did that. And that's important because if you're looking for a power supply like this one, good luck finding one. And furthermore, good luck finding 3. In other words, when you're searching for an SFF for a small form factor power supply, your choices are extremely limited. What if you want 700 watts, modular 80 plus gold? Ha! No. You will find whatever they're offering. That's what you're going to get. You think I wanted that power supply? You think I woke up and said, that's the power supply I want on this computer? No, that is not what happened. I had a choice between this power supply, that power supply, or that one, and that was it. But if it was ATX, I could have literally 100 choices of power supplies to use. Modular, non-modular, semi-modular, 80 plus white, bronze, gold, platinum, titanium, 400 watts, 500 watts, 600 watts, 1500 watts. The world is at my fingertips of power supplies for ATX, but in small form factor power supplies, they are few and far between. And who I end up going back to time and time again is one company, and that's Silverstone. And if Silverstone didn't make small form factor power supplies, I don't know where else you could buy one. I don't see them for sale anywhere. So there is a very limited choice if you're going to build a mini ITX system. And let's say you wanted to put a 2080 Ti in it because you have a case that will accommodate it. This case doesn't apply. It doesn't afford a full-size ATX power supply, but you'd need one potentially to provide the power a 2080 Ti would require. So what would you do? Well, you'd change your case and you'd go to a mini ITX that would support a full ATX power supply, which is clearly what this bracket is for. It's got to be for that. I mean, I can't imagine how much room that's going to take up. But I mean, I know a full-size ATX power supply adapter when I see one. So, well, it wasn't my intention on this video to break out the M1. I'm glad I did, because I didn't know the box was damaged. And if there was a dent in it or something, you want to find that out sooner rather than later with regards to getting that resolved. So thankfully, there's no damage to the case on the inside. It's packed very well. The wait time, like I said, when I went to Ncase, I keep calling it the wrong thing. When I went to mcase.com, I think that's the website, They said that it was sold out. Put your email address in. We'll let you know when we're accepting orders. I don't think it was 2 or 3 days before I got an email that says we're accepting orders. The window is only open for this big, this amount of time. So if you want it, you better put your order in now. And so as soon as I got the email, I responded to it. I paid for it. I think it's around $215. It said it would be like 8 to 10 weeks or something like that. I don't remember. And I said, I don't care, whatever. And it was maybe 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks later, it showed up. So they did everything far ahead of time than what they were setting expectations to. And that's great. That's the way it should be. They should not overpromise and underdeliver, right? So setting those expectations so far out and then beating them so far ahead, that's going to leave you with a happy customer every time. So some of this does require a bit of planning ahead. Like if you know you want to build in that case, don't worry about what motherboard you're going to buy, and don't worry about what processor you're going to buy. When I ordered that case, there were no 10th gen CPUs available from Intel for sale. And even today, trying to find them may be difficult. So you get the case first. Whatever the hard part is, go ahead and set that in motion. Get that hard part out of the way. Everything else can wait. Mini ITX builds aren't going away anytime soon. So there's no need for you to rush out and get a mini ITX board and figure out your cooler and such. If you already know what cooler is going to fit well in the case, like in this particular case, they recommend a few coolers. Go ahead and order that too if you know you're going to use it. Then whatever chip you decide to use and whatever board you decide to use, whatever storage and RAM you decide to use, you can pick that once you have the tough stuff done, right? Once all the waiting is done, which for this case, there's a wait on being able to order it, and then once it's ordered, waiting for it to be delivered. Once that's out of the way, then move forward with your build. Set your foundation, right? If you're building a house, you pour your foundation and you wait and let it harden. You can't just start building the house on it right away. That needs to sit and it needs to solidify. If you're anxious and you're impatient, you're not going to build anything you're proud of or anything that's going to last. Or I should say, the odds are stacked against you for you to succeed at that. So if you want to do something special like this, take a breath, plan it out. Don't rush it. And worst case scenario is you get the case and now you've changed your mind or you lost your job and you don't have the money. You can either put the case in the closet somewhere until times get better, or list the case on for sale because it is such a hard case to find. You should have no problem selling it. But that's another reason not to buy all your parts ahead of time. Not only will the parts depreciate in value, newer parts may be coming out soon. NVIDIA will probably have the 3000 series cards out in time for the the holidays, the Christmas, Hanukkah, the whole sort of Black Friday, let's all go shopping and spend money. I would guess if I was NVIDIA, that's when I would release my next gen cards. And I suspect that's what they'll do if they can, right? There may be some manufacturing issues or quality control issues, but if everything goes well, that would be an ideal time. And if I was Intel or AMD and I already knew that was what NVIDIA was going to do, then I would make sure my product was ready before that and for less money. And that's going to result in some GPU wars that should be very interesting coming up. If not by the end of this year, then by the beginning of next year. AMD is not going to sit idly by and let NVIDIA take control. And Intel is certainly not going to sit there and say, hey, we're going to be continued to left out of this money-making opportunity. We can make GPUs too. We are already doing it in our CPUs. Imagine what we can do if we do a discrete card. So the Intel Xe video card is something that will be coming out. AMD's next generation of architecture will be coming out. And NVIDIA's next architecture is coming out. Nobody can tell you for sure. Everything is speculation. But when you speak in terms of shareholders and shareholder value, if you try and look at it from the perspective of what makes us the most amount of money, then your target release date is the holiday shopping season. We'll see how it plays out. But in the meantime, I wouldn't invest in a real super high-end graphics card and order this case. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to get my super high-end graphics card in like 3 days, and I'm going to wait 2 months to get the case. And by the time the case arrives, that super high-end graphics card is now just a high-end graphics card because a super high-end graphics card may have replaced it. All right. So food for thought. It's always fun to build a computer. It's enjoyable, it's fulfilling, it's a wonderful experience. But we don't want to have any sort of buyer's remorse of, I wish I wasn't so impatient because I could have got a better price or a better product for the same price if I just would have did what Carey suggested, and that is take a breath, wait until you have the hard to find parts first before ordering the rest. And then when you look back on it, you can say, that was the best I could buy at that time. There's no way I could have done better. New technology is always coming out. There's always going to be another CPU. There's always going to be another graphics card. There's always going to be new coolers, new RAM. But at the end of the day, a case is still a case, a power supply is still a power supply. And those are two items that you can purchase and not worry about depreciation. Cases and power supplies, for the most part, don't see the evolutionary advancements that the motherboards and CPUs see, including the advancements in Wi-Fi and USB and sound and all the other things that are now currently part of your motherboard. Whether we're talking about PCIe Gen 4 or we're talking about the latest NVMe storage, the fact of the matter is your case is still your case, and it probably still sells for pretty much whatever you paid for it whenever you bought it, assuming it hasn't been replaced. I have no doubt that if we were to put this Lian Li TU-100 up for sale, I could probably get for it what I paid for it 6 years ago. Maybe more. Sometimes when a part stops being manufactured, the seller can ask for pretty much any price they want, because where else are you going to buy it? So if I wanted to offer that case for 3 times what I wanted to pay for it, 99.7% of the people would say, you got to be crazy. But 0.3% would say, oh my gosh, that guy's got one for sale. They're not available anywhere. I'm buying it. I don't care what the price is. And all you need is one buyer. Who cares what the other 99.7% care? Who cares? You want to find that buyer who sees the value in what you've got and realizes that's just not made anymore. If you tried to buy a 9900 KS Intel CPU right now, it's nearly 3 times the MSRP. If you look at Amazon, this $629 processor is selling for $1,499 because it's not made anymore. And most people would go, that's not even the best processor on the market. Why would you spend $1,500? For $1,500, I could buy something better. Yeah, but it's not a 9900 KS. And you might say, well, so what? And somebody else will look at you like, well, you obviously have no concept of what that processor stands for and what that processor means. And you shouldn't have it. It shouldn't even be in your hands because you don't appreciate it. And that guy or that gal who sees the value of that, they'll spend the $1,500 for it because there's no place else you can go to get one. If that's what it's selling for, that's what you'll pay if you see the value in it. If, on the other hand, you don't see the value in it, nobody's going to convince you. So when it comes to cases, it is entirely possible that you could buy a case. Let's just say the Ncase M1. You say, okay, Carey, I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to put my name on the list so the next time they're taking orders, I'll be able to order one. You get the email, they say, hey, we're taking orders, jump in if you want to jump in, and so you jump in. But you don't order anything else, just the case. Now you go on with your life, and you've completely forgotten about it. Weeks have gone by, and one day in the mail a box arrives, and you go, oh, I forgot I ordered this. And if things in your life have changed where you can no longer build that computer, you can probably resell the case for more than you paid for it. On the other hand, if you are ready to order. Now look and see what parts are available that were not available back when you ordered the case. And further, how the prices may have changed in your favor to get the same parts you were wanting to get anyway, but now they're selling for less. For example, an AMD 3950X CPU is $750 and was only released, what, in January? Today, you can buy that chip for about $70 less. Anywhere from $40 to $70, depending if you catch it on sale. The regular price, I think, now is $710 instead of $750. And I caught one on sale for $685, $688. That was on sale. Same exact chip. Nothing's different. There's an extra $50 or $60 in my pocket. It's something to consider. All right, guys, I guess that's about it for today's video. I have not been paying much attention to the chat, so let me quickly say hello to everybody in chat and address any questions you have regarding computer cases or computer building, anything related to what I'm talking about in this video today. I'd be happy to read your question aloud and provide you with my advice if you would like that. Now's your chance to speak up. In the meantime, because there is a delay, a big delay between what I say and when you hear me, I'm going to bide my time by giving some shouts out to people who have contributed during today's live feed. And that include Ramsey Almoardi, Adam Burdick. Adam contributed $5 and said, Carey, are you going to review the new 8 terabyte NVMe from Sabrent? The 8 terabyte NVMe drive is $1,500. And right now I don't have time to review it. It's also not the fastest drive. It's capacious, it's big, but it's QLC technology. It's a little bit on the slow side when it comes to NVMe. You're sort of sacrificing performance for capacity. Not that its performance is terrible, but it's definitely not winning any races. Now, I have a couple other videos I want to complete with Sabrent before I ask Sabrent to do anything else for me. But if anybody out there wants to buy me one and send it to me, I'll review it. Otherwise, Sabrent would have to voluntarily send it to me. I don't have the budget to purchase one. Not with the YouTube money. But Adam, if you'd like to provide me one, I will happily do a video on it. Anthony Fuentes Navarro has contributed $5 and says, thanks to your video, I had my eureka moment and I got into PC repair and now I love my current job. So thank you. That's awesome, Anthony. I'm so glad to hear that. So many people go to jobs they hate and they'll go home and they'll play with their computer. And it's like, well, couldn't you get a job doing something with computers since you love it so much? And wouldn't that be more pleasurable? Wouldn't that be a better way to spend your time here on Earth to do something productive with your natural talents and your natural interests? So well done, Anthony, or Antony as it is, and thank you so much for letting me know that. That means a lot to me. A couple of contributions have come in from Madi Yoel. Madi has contributed $20, and then he contributed $20 again. Hey, Madi, thank you so much. When I'm done here, I'm going to give you a call, Madi, because I need to talk to you about the Remus computer build and how that's working out for you. I have to assume no news is good news, and I'd rather not assume. So I'll give you a call and we'll find out how that's working out. Brendan Looney just contributed £5. Hey, Brendan, thank you so much. All right, now let me look and see if I got any questions to answer. I'm just looking through the chat. Ed Now says, we were pulling for you during your frustration moments. You share more than tech stuff. Thanks, Carey. Here's a small donation via PayPal to help with the channel. Thank you, Ed. Let's make sure Ed is blue here. Appreciate that very much. Intel Nook 8i7 says, Carey, what to you are areas for improvement, the to or case you use most of the time? Oh, the 200R. What are areas for improvement on the 200R case? They could, the space between the back of the motherboard tray and the rear panel is too narrow. It makes cable management very difficult. If they could move the tray in, I don't think they need to make the case any wider. I think they can just move that motherboard tray in by about half an inch, or I don't know, anything. Oh, I'll take a quarter of it. I'll take anything you'll give me. Quarter of an inch, just move that tray in a little bit. So I have a bigger gap between the rear side panel and the back of the motherboard tray. Then I have much easier cable management. I'd also like to see an improvement on the power and reset buttons. The problem isn't with the buttons themselves, but with the little plasticky painted front that the paint wears off of. It seems like not a very good design. It's not something that affects the operation of the computer. It just looks like hell. And what a shame to replace a whole computer or have to order a whole new I/O just because of bad switch design. I think they would have been better off to place a traditional plastic button that's not painted, just a round or square plastic button, just like, we've got a button here. Just a regular old everyday button. What's wrong with a button? And you don't have to worry about paint wearing off of it. So that's a very minor thing, but the motherboard tray being pushed in a little bit more, that's major. That could make a huge difference in how the cable management, how difficult the cable management, or how challenging the cable management is or can be on the 200R. Obviously, if your 200R isn't built up with much, it's not a big deal. But if you've got 4 hard drives in there and you're running 4 SATA cables and 4 power cables plus a GPU, it's a real challenge to get all those cables to fit in that little tiny space they give you between the motherboard tray and the rear panel, the rear side panel. Other than that, I've got no other suggestions for improvement. And if they wanted to add 2 more like USB 2.0 ports, so you had 2 USB 3s and 2 USB 2s, that wouldn't upset me. I'd be okay with that. Couldn't hurt, but not required. But if I was going to improve it, that's what I would do. Scott Hallinan says, I enjoyed today's session. It was very knowledgeable. Hey, Scott, thank you. I want to remind you, in this particular video, nothing has been provided by the manufacturer. Lian Li doesn't talk to me. They've not reached out to me. I haven't talked to them, I don't think, ever. These cases were purchased with my own money, and they will be going to, well, Ron Hillier is in the chat, and Ron is the one who I had built this for, and now Ron is going to get this one. And I told Ron, because I know he was excited when I built it, I said, don't get too excited for me to ship it yet. I still have to do a comparison between the TU-100 and the TU-150. So until you see that video, this isn't shipping to you. But once you see that video, there's nothing holding me back from getting this in the mail to you. So I imagine Ron has got a big smile on his face because he knows the next step when I put that panel back on is going over to the FedEx store. And then I'll be interested to hear from Ron and how the machine works for him over time. He enjoys gaming, and he will be using it for its intended purpose, and we'll see how it holds up. Be very curious to follow up with Ron and how the machine ages, just as we did with this. I asked Ron to send this back to me so I could upgrade it and surprised him by changing the case. Maybe in 6 more years, we'll do the same thing again. We'll see what happens. Maybe the TU-200 will be out. We'll put in an AMD 15th generation, an Intel 15th generation chip in there with an NVIDIA 6080 graphics card. I don't know. Rick says, it's weird not seeing me drink a Coke. Well, that's because it's back here. Before I started my video, I took a big drink and then I set it down. So it's there the whole time. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. When do you think humans will set foot on Mars? Don't know, don't care. I think we could colonize the oceans and it'd be a lot faster, a much shorter trip, and the challenges of living in an environment that's hostile outside, to have to live in buildings and provide food, you could do that underwater. We've got a lot of, 2/3 of this planet is covered in water. So I don't know that I'm in agreement with just trashing the place and leaving. Well, we trashed this planet, let's go to another planet and trash that one. How about we fix the one we've got? I'd like to see that. So whether or not humans step foot on Mars, whoever does will die there. That much I can tell you for sure. Whoever steps foot on Mars will die on Mars. And, if they're fine with it, that's fine with me. It's just, seems like it'd be awful lonely. But if there's any technical questions I can help answer, especially with regards to computer cases and parts, I'd certainly be happy to answer those questions. We'll try and stay focused. Intel may have gone bust by then. I think Intel's the world's largest chip manufacturer. And computer CPUs are not the majority of Intel's money. Intel could stop making computer CPUs and they would still be a multi-billion-dollar company for all the other chips they use. I think if you did a little research, you'd realize that Intel's making chips and things you use that is not a computer, or is not what you determine to be a computer. It may be in your television, your refrigerator, your automobile, chips in rockets. Intel, as far as I know, is the world's largest chip manufacturer. They're not just making CPUs. In fact, when I worked at Intel, you very rarely see anything about CPUs. It's mostly about integrated circuits and chip design used in production of other items. So Intel's not going to go bust. No. Even if AMD sells the best CPU you can buy and Intel says, we give up, Intel will still make more money than AMD. That's the unfortunate reality. The world is bigger than, and I see this with enthusiasts a lot. I see enthusiasts, they just have this myopic view of what a company does. And if you were inside the company, you'd realize it's making CPUs is this much of what Intel does. Joe Panico says, Carey, I was impressed with your review of the Sabre and NVMe enclosure. I could see your frustration, and you handled it very professionally. Great job, Carey. Joe, thank you for that. So the internet tends to attract a certain kind of a person where if you make a mistake or you misspeak or what you say can be interpreted into a negative way, they're quick to jump on you and to try to publicly humiliate you. And when I was making that NVMe enclosure video, I thought this will be a 15-minute video. I've got other things to do. I was really busy, I was running late, and I said, let me just do this, it'll be quick. How long does it take to say, here's an NVMe drive, here's an enclosure, it's toolless, it plugs in, let's run Crystal Disk Mark on it, and there's your results. That is not what happened. And it seemed to get worse. And I had to figure out a way where I could end the video in a way that concluded something, right? I wanted, instinctively, I said, this is all going wrong. Let me do this off camera and come back when I have some answers. But I felt that I needed to see it through to some form of conclusion. I needed some answers. That's when I pulled out the pluggable unit and decided to start comparing to help me isolate where I needed to learn more. That also meant for me to send an email to the folks at Sabrent and see what they had to say. And it will be something I come back to and revisit, hopefully with results that I can explain. Because even now I don't have all of the answers, but I know that the system I was testing with wasn't ideal. If I want to show the performance of this unit, I've got to plug it into a computer that has USB 3.2 on it. And if it's got Gen 2 by 2, then that's the best case scenario. And then explain to you that you may not get these results if you don't have these parts. But what I did was I used a motherboard that I wrongly assumed had the latest USB on it, and it does not. Well, when you're buying an $80 motherboard, why should you think you're going to get the best of everything? I don't know what I was thinking. So that was really embarrassing for me, and I was on the fence as to whether or not to release that video for fear that people are going to come at me and say, well, that's the moron we always knew you were. Thanks for proving it. And I didn't get nearly as much of that as I thought during the first 10 hours of the video out, so I went ahead and released it. But what I did get, I wasn't expecting. And maybe it's because I vocalized my concern. Maybe it's because I said, well, now people are going to act this way. That so many of you came out and said, no, we appreciate what you did, and we have empathy and sympathy for what happened. It doesn't make you an idiot. You know, it's a mistake any of us could have easily made. And furthermore, it still doesn't make sense. Like, there's still no real answer to, for example, why did the front USB port work faster than the rear one? And furthermore, what are the speeds we should be getting? So I do have those numbers now with what speeds we should be getting from USB 3.1 Gen 1 versus USB 3.2 Gen 2 and then Gen 2 by 2. Now if you can get a 2 by 2, you can see like Thunderbolt level speeds. You can like double your performance. But then how realistic is it to assume that that review is useful to many of you when most of you won't have USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2? However, maybe it's something worth knowing so that when you shop for your next system, you know what to look for. I don't know. It goes back and forth, back and forth. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. I shared with you real life experience, unedited and unrehearsed and unscripted. And you guys have been very kind and supportive and understanding that I'm a human being and I don't know everything. And I appreciate that. But I will always get the answers and I will always provide you with an explanation once I have the information, which I still don't have. It still doesn't make sense to me. And I still think the Sabrent enclosure needs an improvement in its design. I'm not a fan of that design. I think Pluggable did a better job. I like Sabrent. Let me be honest. The people at Sabrent have been very nice to me. I don't want to say anything bad about them, but I also want to be honest. And Sabrent is not a sponsor, but they sent me that product for free. Had I paid for that product with my own money, I probably would be sending it back. That's the truth. Now that doesn't mean everything Sabrent makes is bad. I like the Sabrent Rocket Q drive. I'm using it in my system, that 4 terabyte drive, and I'm very happy with it. And I will continue to use it daily, and if it ever fails or has a problem, I will let you know. And that's the best test I can do, which is to use it and rely on it every day. And if I didn't like it, no matter if it was free, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't use it. My office computer is what runs my operations. And if it goes down, my business is down. So the very fact that I'm entertaining using that Sabrent drive as my only drive in my system is saying a lot. And if there's a problem that develops with it, I will share that with you. And I think that's better than any other review you're ever going to see on YouTube, because generally these people, they get a thing, a device, they have it for a couple days or a couple weeks, they run some tests on it, and they come to their conclusions. Living with it every day on something that's mission critical, that's important, that if it goes down means you start losing money, that to me is putting your money where your mouth is. It's one thing to review a product and recommend it. It's another thing for you to eat your own dog food, which I guess takes us full circle. When somebody recommends a product the first question you should ask them is, do you use this product yourself? Or did you just test it? And if they said, well, I just tested it, then their review is worthless because it says nothing to the reliability and it says nothing as to the support, if there's a problem, that the company may or may not provide to you if and when that day is needed. No company makes every product perfect. At some point, even the best companies need to provide support for products that have gone bad for any number of reasons. Do they have good support? Is the support responsive? Are they looking to find a solution, or are they looking to find excuses? There's only one way you're going to know that, and it's not from reviewing the product. It's from living with the product and then one day having an issue. So if somebody's recommending a product that they themselves are not using day in and day out in their life, that they rely on it, I wouldn't accept their advice any more than I would accept the advice of a person fatter than me telling me how to diet. You understand what I'm saying? Consider your source. So because these videos are dated, I can easily tell when a month has gone by or a year has gone by, and we can revisit it and say, well, here's how it's held up over the last year. And if there's been any problems, data corruption or failures to start or anything like that, I'll tell you. I've got no dog in the race to not tell you. At the same time, if it's all good news, I think that's worth considering. If you're going to buy an NVMe drive, what do you know about them? I've been using the Samsung and Intel drives primarily as NVMe drives, and I've not had any problems with them. I've had no reason to ever contact Intel or Samsung support for replacement of a solid-state drive. Truth be told, even on 2.5-inch drives, I've never had one go bad. I've never had a customer bring me a computer with a solid-state drive that's bad. That's not to say solid-state drives don't go bad. It is to say I've not had one come into my shop, whether it was one I installed or one the customer installed. The first solid-state drive I installed was, I think, in 2013. And all the solid-state drives I installed in 2013 and 2014 and 2015, those have all been replaced because the newer drives are larger and faster, not because they failed. When I get one that fails, you better believe I'm going to make a video on it. So, I do tend to stick with Intel and Samsung on NVMe drives because I like the Intel SSD Toolbox software, and I like the Samsung Magician software. And with Sabrent and AData, they have utilities for their solid-state drives, but they mostly just provide information. Here's the make, here's the model, here's the serial number, here's the status. They don't really offer you any features or bells or whistles. And you would use their software if there was a firmware update, which very rarely ever happens. With Samsung, it seems like they stay more on top of firmware updates for whatever reason, I don't know. Speaking of firmware updates, the folks at Sabrent saw the video on the external enclosure and advised me to update the firmware on the external enclosure. Now, I don't know what version of firmware it currently has. For all I know, it's already got the latest version. However, that may result, if I have an older version, that may actually answer these puzzling questions. Like, it all may start to make sense if there's an issue or an incompatibility with the older firmware, if I have the older firmware. So when I pick up that video to continue it, I will save that for camera. I will show you how to update the firmware on the enclosure, which is a different process than a BIOS. It's a different process than the firmware on a solid-state drive. It's a unique process from the manufacturer. It's not something you see every day. It's not something you would do every day. It's very different from a motherboard BIOS, which is very important. And I don't want you to confuse a BIOS and a firmware. These are two different things. A BIOS is something that sits on your motherboard that helps identify and be compatible with the RAM that you've installed and the CPU that you've installed. Firmware, on the other hand, is instructions on a piece of hardware that help it to communicate with another piece of hardware, or in this case, Windows, the software. That firmware is there to communicate via a driver how your software can interact with it and control it. at maximum performance and maximum reliability. And when they come out with newer firmware updates, it can also increase how the drive automatically maintains itself in the case of a solid state drive, or it may increase the performance, the speed, or the reliability, or the efficiency, depending on specifically what's changed in the firmware. If the firmware is bad or is not programmed efficiently, it doesn't matter what you plug into it. It's limited by the firmware. So if the firmware is done correctly, then your drive shouldn't see that as a bottleneck. And so it's important, just as it is to have the latest BIOS, it's important that you have the latest firmware if you want to have that compatibility, that performance, and that reliability be maximized. That's what it's supposed to do. Whether or not that's what it actually does, we'll find out. But again, I appreciate your kind words and understanding in that, because it was a very embarrassing video position to find myself to be in front of a live audience. And it was really grossly underestimated. I just thought it's a 15-minute video, right? I did not expect the curveballs. There were several curveballs in that video. And I hope at the very least it made it interesting. If I do everything exactly right and I have all the answers, I suppose that wouldn't be quite as interesting. But it would also make me less of a target for people. All right, let's see if there's any other questions, and then we can wrap things up here. Just going through the chat room. What is the life of a computer? That's what Edgar wants to know. A cheaper computer has a shorter useful life. In other words, if you put together a $500 or $600 budget machine, it will likely become frustrating to use within 4 years. And what ends up happening is I'll run into customers who bought the cheapest thing they can buy years ago, and now they're having some difficulty. You know, how do I get the latest Windows 10 on it, or how do I make it go faster? You don't. Or rather, you shouldn't. When you bought something that inexpensive, you should have understood when you purchased it that it will last a limited number of years, at which point it will be due for replacement. And when you replace it, you may choose to buy another cheapest thing you can find and repeat this cycle. Or you may choose to buy something more upper range, higher range, $1,000 or more, and you could expect twice the life, twice the price, twice the useful life. Even though the computer they bought for $300 still boots and it still works, it's slow, it's cumbersome, and it may even have severe security exploits that are not being patched, and it may be frustrating to try and use it because of how long things take. Yes, you could replace the motherboard, the RAM, the CPU, and the power supply, but then you've basically built a whole new computer, and if you're going to do that, just go buy another one. It'd be a lot faster. So you get what you pay for. The useful life of a good computer, you don't have to buy the most expensive one, but if you spend right around $1,000, the useful life on that computer should be a minimum of 8 years based on the way things have been evolving and progressing the last 8 years. Computers I built 8 years ago are ready to be replaced now. They're starting to show they're a bit slow and they don't have the latest USB and things like that, for example. So while they work and they get the job done, and they probably will continue to do that for a few more years, for my clients, my business clients that have machines that I built in 2013, it's time to replace those machines now. And when we replace them now, we'll replace them with machines that are right around $1,000, and those machines should last them at least another 8 years. So that's the cycle currently. It used to be when you bought a computer, it was obsolete 10 minutes after you took it out of the box. It's simply not the case anymore. And it also depends on how you use the computer. If you're somebody who's gaming and you always want to play the latest AAA titles, then you're going to need to buy a higher end machine more often. Its useful life is going to be shorter to you, because the software that you're utilizing on it is cutting edge and is pushing the boundaries of what the technology can do. And every time these new AAA titles come out, each one's raising the bar from the one before it, requiring more resources and becoming more demanding on your computer processor power, GPU power, etc. So for a gamer who's playing the latest AAA titles with the highest resolution graphics, your useful life cycle is going to be significantly reduced in order for you to stay at that level. But for the rest of us, we can get to that level and it will slowly reduce down over the course of, I'd say, right around 8 years, you should start to feel like, I need more space, or it needs to be faster. Something about it is going to be a limiting factor that was not a limiting factor before, but compared to what's available 8 years from now, when you put them side by side, you'll say, it's time. But if you're in a position where there's nothing you can do financially, you could continue to live with it for another couple of years reasonably. There's no reason why, outside of a mechanical drive, that anything should fail. It's all solid state parts. It'll probably run for 70 years, 100 years without any problems. On occasion, you'll get something fry, something will fry. It's not normal, it happens. Your motherboard may just burn out one day. It's more likely to happen if you're overclocking or messing around on the insides. If you sort of leave it alone and just use it, it'll last the most trouble-free for the longest period of time. But those who like to tweak and play around on the inside, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but just have realistic expectations that there may be consequences for that others won't suffer from. So decide accordingly what's right for you, your personality, and your budget. Jeff Jankowitz says, my first build was an AMD Athlon, and it ran for 7 years. I rarely ever shut it down, just for updates, and once a week I rebooted it. Yeah. Tomas says the 200R is lacking all-in-one liquid cooling support. Yes, but so getting back to the 200R, I don't see that as a shortcoming. The fact that it doesn't accept liquid cooling, to me, is not a shortcoming. Liquid cooling is a temporary cooling solution, and anybody in business generally doesn't want it. Liquid cooling is expensive, and it has to be replaced every few years. You can't just put a liquid cooler in there and say, I'm good for 8 years. You probably won't be. At some point, your liquid cooler is going to fail. Whether it's the pump that fails, or it's the liquid inside starts to get thick or lose its viscosity ability, and you're stuck with a pump that just doesn't do anything. If you put an air cooler on it, you're good for life. So again, we deal with these enthusiast level of demands, which are not realistic, in my opinion. They're not required, and they're not realistic for the beneficial operation of a computer to be reliable and productive. In a business environment, productivity is key. And if you have a slower computer that's reliable, then that is a faster computer than a faster computer that crashes, or a faster computer that needs to be taken down for maintenance with a liquid cooler replaced once every 4 or 5 years. Slower is faster in that instance. If you're a hobbyist and you just like the idea of playing with liquid cooling, don't let me stop you. But as a business person, you will not make any money in the computer repair business selling and installing liquid coolers with any sustainable level of income. You may sell a few here and there, but you would be very unlikely to sustain a business fixing computers if your specialty is liquid coolers. It's something that people generally do themselves. It's not something they generally hire somebody out for. And working as a tech in a corporate environment, in a business, in real life, you will never see a liquid cooler. You just won't see it. So the fact that the 200R doesn't accommodate it is not important to me. It's not a glass case with RGB on it. So that's the beauty of it. You can put a liquid cooler on a 200R. You can put a 120 millimeter liquid cooler on the back fan, where the back fan is on the rear of the case. But you're not going to put in anything bigger. If you see that as a shortcoming, then that's a hobbyist attitude. It's not a business attitude. It's not a sustainable concern that as a business owner, I would find to be a shortcoming. Frankie B says, Carey, I don't see my comments in the chat. It looks like I'm being hidden. Then how did I read that, Frankie? Frankie's been very generous with contributions to the channel. Thank you so much, Frankie. You're not hidden. We can see you just fine. What else do we have here? Stephen Bernstein, always good to see you, Steve. Steve says, hey, Frankie, we can see you. That's great. Nick Poverman sends me a link to Amazon for the 8 terabyte drive. Yes, I'm well aware it's $1,500. I'm not quite sure why you're pointing that out to me. We already talked about that. Ron says, I can wait. I know you say that, but do you want to wait? I need to get it out of the house. And I need to get it in your hands so we can be properly tested. Luke says, I'm sure Ron is going to be more than happy. He better be. Carey, can you suggest a different motherboard that is likely available to replace your $623 build? No, I can't. You see, the minute I mention something, then people watching it will go and buy it. And then it won't be available anymore. I assure you, you have a keyboard and a mouse, and you can search just as well as anybody else. You can go on Amazon, you can go on Newegg, or if you're in another country, whatever site is that you shop from, and sort motherboards by Intel or AMD, and then sort by micro ATX, and then look through the prices and the features available to one that fits your needs and your budget and order accordingly. It's really not rocket science. And it will fluctuate. What you see available today will more than likely be different when you do the same search next week. So you may just be best waiting. I don't know because I don't know you, but I can assure you this is something extraordinarily simple that you don't need any help with. What case has the best cable management? The case I've worked on that I was most impressed with are from NZXT. Now, I don't really care about sometimes I think the power supply shroud is kind of stupid, gets in the way. The way that the drives mount are not toolless like the 200R. So the NZXT case is not perfect. But I will say, when I put Threadripper together in the NZXT case, it was the easiest liquid cooler install I've ever done on any case ever. I liked that the front port switches were all on one connector that plugs straight in, and I liked that it had these tracks laid out for the cable management. And I found that to be a wonderful, thoughtful design implementation that other case manufacturers should adopt. But there were also a couple of things I didn't like about the case. So when we're saying what case do you like best for cable management, consider the fact that there's some consequences of suffering where the case fails miserably in other areas. It is very, very heavy. I think Threadripper weighs about 60 pounds. It's a very heavy and loud. It's not that the case is loud. The case could have done more to dampen the sound, but Thready it's like starting up a jet. It is way too loud, way too loud. George Regalado contributed $20. Hey, George, thank you very much for your support. I'll look through and see if there's any final questions I can address, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. Michael says, I never even heard of Sabrent until Carey did a couple reviews on them. Yeah. Yeah, they're not as well known as some of the other manufacturers, but the quality of the products they make is certainly deserving of attention. And the pricing is very aggressive for what you're getting in return with performance. So hopefully I'll have some more of their products on the show because I'm liking what I'm seeing mostly. John Young says, nice troll control, guys. I like that. Troll control. Brilliant. Thanks to my friends in blue there for snuffing out those trolls. I appreciate that very much. You guys rock. Carey, did you run Prime 95 on the computer behind you on the range? No, not yet. That will be followed up with, that's a repair video with the Pure Base 900 case. And in the most recent video, part 3, I did the other day, we put the replacement motherboard in with the replacement cooler, and I haven't turned it on since then. I will come back and revisit that, and I will do both the Time Spy demo to get a benchmark and the Prime 95 from 15 to 20 minutes and read what our temps are. So it's coming up. Lance Ateo contributed 5 Canadian dollars. Hey, Lance, thank you for that. Once again, just looking for any final questions I can answer. Aorus Team Jeffrey says, Phanteks cases have awesome cable management as well. That may be the case. I think I've only worked with one Phanteks case, and it was a nice case, but it was heavy. And those cost me a lot more money to ship. But the truth is the NZXT cases are also heavy. So I just don't have, I'm sure if you look here in my video library, you'll see my build with the Phanteks Enthu. I want to say it was the Phanteks Enthu that I did. And I, as I recall, there wasn't anything terrible about it other than it was heavy. Carey, what brand would you recommend for laptops? When I buy a laptop, I buy Dell XPS. So I don't know what brand you should buy, but I require the power to do video editing on the go. I need something with a good battery life, and I need something that's not too small of a screen. 13-inch screen is too small. 17-inch screen is too big. You try to open a 17-inch screen on the tray of on an airline, you're like Tyrannosaurus Rex. You know, it's too big. So 15-inch Dell XPS, or Dell XPS 15 as it's called, is my choice for a laptop. But you can expect that to run right around $1,500. That's kind of my baseline. I won't go any higher than that. I know you can buy more expensive laptops. Alienware and Razer and others make them. You can also buy some pretty inexpensive business laptops from Lenovo and Acer and Asus. However, for me personally, those don't have enough power, and I wouldn't use them if I had them. So for me, I choose Dell XPS 15. Are the 200Rs going out? No, they are not. Carey, do you work on laptops? It depends on what the problem is. If we're going to do a hard drive to solid state drive upgrade, then yes. If we're going to remove or replace the RAM, yes. But if it needs a screen replacement, power jack replacement, or any sort of motherboard, then no. Because there are over 10 million different laptop parts, each unique to the manufacturer and to the manufacturer's model. It's no exaggeration when I tell you there's more than 10 million laptop parts. So I have no desire and no interest to fix at a motherboard level a laptop or a tablet or a smartphone. There are others who do that, but I will upgrade a laptop. I will upgrade the RAM or diagnose bad RAM, and I will gladly upgrade the storage to solid state storage. That's the extent at which I work on laptops. If you do a search on my channel with the word laptops, you will see several laptop videos. Mira Ora has contributed $20, says, sneaking in at the end of the class, but better late than never, right? After the stream ends, I will rewind and watch it. Right on, Mira Ora. Thank you for your contribution, as always. Essential Working Too Hard contributes $5. Said, wow, did I miss this live stream a day late and $1 short? Well, that's okay. You'll always be able to watch these live streams shortly after they air. YouTube has to process it, and it'll be available 10 years from now. You could put it off and watch it in 2027. It's still going to be here. 7 years from now, it'll still be here. So thank you guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. Sorry you didn't catch it earlier, but that's all right. It'll be waiting for you. I think, yeah, Aorus Jeffrey says the video I did with the Fantex case was an Enthoo Evolve. That sounds right. Thanks, Aorus Jeffrey. The problem in repairing laptops here in America is that the cost of repair can often be near or exceed the cost of replacing the laptop. It depends on the laptop. A lot of people that reach out to me for laptop repairs are people who bought a $300 laptop 4 years ago. And I have to tell them, you're trying to refuel a disposable lighter. Sure, it's possible, but why in the world would anybody spend the time and effort to do that when you can throw it away and buy another one for 99 cents? These computers are intended, these really cheap computers, they're intended to be disposable. Repairing them is difficult because they're not easily serviceable by design, and finding parts is nearly impossible. It's almost like you have to buy another one to use as a donor. Well, if you're going to buy another one, just use it instead and keep the old one as the donor. You understand what I'm saying? When you buy something inexpensive, when you're on a budget, and that is out of warranty, it is unlikely to be cost effective to repair. Not only will you be down without it during the diagnosis and repair time, waiting for parts to arrive, because they're not going to have the parts in stock. There's over 10 million parts. They're going to have to figure out what part it is. Hopefully, they'll get it right. Then, hopefully, the part they get is the right part. And hopefully, the part they get works and it's not from some questionable seller on eBay that sold them a knockoff item that's not real, which will further delay your repair. Then once all that's done, you will pay the money for the part, you will pay the money for the labor, and after however many days it's been that you've been without the computer, you take it back home, you start using it, and if it happens again, what do? It means the person who repaired it didn't repair the cause, but they repaired the problem. So if they didn't repair the cause, then you're going to end up with the same problem again, and it has to go back to the shop. Then the question is the guy going to do the work for free, or is the guy going to charge you? And is he going to charge you? At what point do you say, wait a minute, I could have bought 2 computers now, and I could be up and running instead of sitting here waiting without a computer? If you buy a cheap computer, you can either fix it yourself or buy another one when it goes bad. When you want to spend $1,000 or more on a tablet or a phone or a laptop, then it makes sense to repair it. But this cheap stuff, you guys have to learn. When you buy something cheap, it's got a shorter lifespan, and when it's gone, you either resuscitate it on your own or you buy another one. Those are the only things that make financial sense as far as I'm concerned. And I'm telling you as somebody who runs a business. It would not do my business any good to have my business down waiting for something to get fixed. When my air conditioner in my house broke and I couldn't find anybody to fix it, I went out there and fixed it myself because I couldn't sleep in a 110-degree house. What am I going to do? Go to a hotel? And then where do my dogs go? Nobody was available. It was a hot summer day. Everybody's booked up. So I did it myself. You have to have that attitude if you've got cheap computer parts for whatever reason. You don't have any money. I don't care what your reason is. The bottom line is you've got something that's broken that was cheap when you bought it. It's out of warranty, and the cost to repair it is probably not money well spent, in my opinion. You could take that same money, put it towards the cost of a new cheap unit, and have a new warranty, be back up and running immediately with no delays and no concern of whether or not it was fixed right or wrong. And in my opinion, unless you're a hobbyist with nothing else better to do, the financial sense of knowing where the cutoff point is a very important thing to consider. I think sometimes we get emotional attachments to this stuff. You got to let it go sometimes, in my opinion. In the meantime, I won't fix them anyway. Even if you had a $1,000 laptop, I wouldn't fix it. But there are people out there that do. I don't fix phones either, but there are people out there that do. It's a difficult conversation. In fact, I wish you could have overheard the conversation I had, I think it was Friday. Customer calls me, somebody I've never talked to before. He says, I got your name from somebody who recommended you. And I have this laptop, it's 8 years old. And it's got this problem, which to me sounded like a bad hard drive. And I said, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like you've got a bad hard drive. And if that is the problem, a new solid state drive will set you back about $100, and the replacement will set you back another $125 for labor to get the new drive in and get your operating system reinstalled, all your drivers back up and running, all your software reactivated. And at $225, your laptop isn't going to be worth $225. When it's all said and done, the value of your laptop will still be about $50. Given that it's 8 years old, it's on its second life. And I would say that it owes you nothing. I would further recommend that you put it to pasture and you reward yourself with something newer, more modern, warranted, more secure. This customer wanted Windows 7. I said, I wouldn't work on it with Windows 7. He goes, but I don't plug it into the internet. I said, I don't care. I have a business to run, and that business contains liability. So whether or not you tell me you're connecting it to the internet doesn't change my liability, because all you have to do is plug it in one time, or somebody else does. And in the millisecond that it's plugged in, you can already be infected because you're not getting all the updates, because you're not plugged into the internet. Therefore, you're just wide open waiting for trouble. And when that trouble ends up draining every last bit of your savings account and stealing your identity, who do you think you can go after for that? The anonymous person in another country who did it to you, or the technician who's in your state where you could very easily file a small claims court against, claiming that they should have never given you the computer in that condition. And what's my defense going to be? Well, Your Honor, he said he was never going to plug it in to the internet, so that made it okay? It doesn't make it okay. And I don't want to be associated with that. So you need to be running Windows 10. You need to be running it on modern hardware. And if you want to hold on to Windows 7 and an 8-year-old laptop, the world is going to leave you behind. And that's exactly what I told him. You are going to get left behind. Nobody's waiting for you. If you choose to stand behind while the flood is coming and everybody's getting on the boat and you want to stand out in the water, stand there. I don't care. But when that boat leaves, you'll be left alone. So you hold on to that Windows 7 and you hold on to that 8-year laptop. And I wish you the best of luck. I said, you can call around to some other shops. You might find, I'm sure there's somebody out there, maybe a hobbyist or, somebody who's not running a business where liability is an issue, who can help you. It's just not me. And I would advise whatever money that you think you were going to spend to fix this, you put that towards the price of a new laptop. Reward yourself with something new, modern, fast, warranted, peace of mind. You deserve it. You deserve it. You've earned it. It's not a lot of money. If you were going to spend $250 on the repair, spend $500 on something new. Or go crazy and spend $1,000. Finance it. Spend $100 a month for 12 months and get yourself something that will last many years and bring you a lot of joy. Stop holding on to this old stuff. I don't get this human attachment to physical things that have no feelings and no emotion. It's just a thing. So I'm not the best salesman. I think most capitalist business owners will gladly take a customer's money regardless if it's a good investment for the customer. I'm not that guy, and my business will always stay small. It'll never be a multi-million-dollar business, and I'll never have a bunch of employees, because then I would have to take work on that I don't want to take in order to keep money coming in to pay employees their salaries. So at that point, you're not looking out for what's best for the customer. You're looking out for what's best for your business. I got to keep my employees busy. I got to pay their salaries. So if you're calling me with a problem, I'm not even listening to what the problem is. I'm just saying, bring it in. I've got a problem that's blah, 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 blah. Bring it in. How much would it cost for blah, blah, blah? I don't know. Bring it in. That's how most businesses operate in this arena that I'm in. The vast majority, by far, are only looking to bring in money. They don't look out for what's the best interest of the customer. And that makes me a very bad businessman. Because a good businessman, as it's defined in America, is somebody who makes a lot of money. And I think that looking out for the best interest of people is more important than fattening my wallet. In fact, I don't see any reason why I can't do both. It's just slower. The level of time it takes me to reach certain financial goals takes me longer because I have these self-imposed limitations that my morals and ethics drive me by, and you can blame my mother for that. That's how I was raised. All right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. It looks like we're past dinner time for the dogs. We got to get them fed. And just one more quick look through the chat. I think we're all set here. My thanks to everybody for all the support, the kind words in the chat. It means a lot to me. I really do appreciate your kindness. Mahilo Dasik has contributed 250 RSD. Hold on, I gotta look up what RSD is. I got an education in finance. That's Serbian dinars, 250 Serbian dinars, or $2.41 US. Thank you for your contribution. Abdul Azim Patel, a frequent contributor here. Thank you, Abdul, with $4.99. Carey, do an X470 or X570 board with one of the top 3 Ryzen chips. I already have. There's three X470 builds and 1 X570 build already on the channel, Abdul. I did order, I'll share something with you. I'll show you. I mentioned to you the 3950 was on sale. Even though I don't have any customers ordering 3950, I bought it just because. And I have a couple of stacks of like this, but this is the stack that was closest for me to grab, just to give you an idea. I know a lot of times when I come out here, I'm talking about how busy I am, and I try and give you a little window into some of the projects I've got going on. And it's really not there to boast, and it's not there, it's just there to prove that I'm not just saying I'm busy. Right? Anybody, oh, I'm busy. Yeah, sure you are. So I'm trying to give you examples to say, well, I got to do this, I got to do this, so that you'll understand that it's not just an excuse, it's real. And when I see a deal on a processor or whatever, I'll pick it up because I know I'll use it in something someday. So for example, I know I showed this the other day. I picked up a 10700K 10th gen Intel. There's obviously no cooler on this, and I don't have a motherboard for it, but I will. Maybe I'll put it in the Ncase. I don't know. This is the Ryzen 9. This is the one I told you I got on sale, the 3950X, brand new, sealed, never been opened. This was on sale at some point. This is a Ryzen 5 3400G with a cooler. And this is a Ryzen 5 3900X. So these two chips, these are your two top tier, right? When you get up to the Ryzen 9 series, you have the 3950 and the 3900. Right now, the streaming computer that I'm broadcasting to you on is a 3900 with the X470 motherboard that's in there from Asus. And I finished building the 3950X, got that over to my sister, and I had her do rendering on that, render a project file that on Threadripper took an hour and 10 minutes, and on the 3950X took 45 minutes. It was 35 minutes faster. And the 3950 chip is far cheaper than that Threadripper was. And old Thready is starting to act up on her, starting to crash. If she's happy with the 3950X, I'm going to ask her to give Threadripper back to me, and we're going to do something drastic to it here on the channel. I don't know that I'll ever buy another Threadripper chip. For the same reason I wouldn't buy the Socket 2011s. They're very finicky, they're fast, they're bleeding edge, but they're finicky and they're loud. The cooling solutions are very limited on Threadripper. So I could pull the motherboard out and maybe do something like this. I don't know. The RAM's still fine, the storage is still fine. Actually, the storage in Threadripper probably needs to be replaced. It's 3 Samsung NVMe 500 gig drives and a RAID 0 for a total of 1.5 terabytes moving data at 10,000 megabytes a second. But with an X570 chip with a 3950 in there, we're moving the data at 5,000 with no RAID. So that's what my sister's using now. She's got that computer I tested. If you recall, Sabrent sent me their Rocket drive that's PCIe 4. And it also has the Corsair MP600 2 terabyte PCIe 4 NVMe drive. It's got 2 NVMe PCIe Gen 4 drives in it with that G-Skill Royal RAM. And her reaction to when she got it, because it's all sealed up, all the cable management's done, the panels are back on it, it's really nice. And I didn't have time to film it, so she's gonna film it completed so that when she puts that build video together, which was done over 2 months ago, she can add the final piece of, the whole thing, lighting up. It's all RGB. It's beautiful. And more importantly, it's running really well, although she's only had it a couple days. And it's also a lot quieter. So we'll see how it evolves in the next week or two. And then I'm going to ask my sister to sacrifice one or the other one because she doesn't need that many computers. And then we'll do something with it. I suspect I'm going to get Thready back. And that's Thready's last chance. So just because, something's advertised as being super powerful, shouldn't make it more attractive to you to buy it. These chips that are advertised as bleeding edge are often nightmares to maintain. I wouldn't build one for a customer. If you wanted to buy a Threadripper from me, I wouldn't sell you one because I don't want your phone calls with problems. You know who can attest to this? I don't know if he's in the chat today, but you'll often see John Yasuda in blue in the chat room. And ask John to tell you his story about the X299 and X99 experiences he's had. And now he's been moved over to a socket 1151 Intel, which is a system like I would use that you see me build here. And he's never had any problems since. As far as I know, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, all of his problems went away and have stayed away. So when you consider that also cost John half as much money, you can imagine his perspective right now when it comes to these high-end systems not really being worth it. You really have to have a need to justify that level of maintenance and headaches. And most of you out there don't. Like, you've got to be doing something so resource intensive that requires all those cores that it makes a significant production difference to put up with it. Otherwise, stick with the high-end AMD or stick with the high-end Intel. Stay away from X299, stay away from X399, unless you just like an ongoing, never-ending project. In which case, choose accordingly. So yeah, so I don't have any motherboards for any of this stuff. And I got a stack of Intel CPUs like this, just i7s, i5s. They'll all be used in something someday. They get purchased because I get alerts when things go on sale, and if something's a good price, I look and see what the limit is. If I can, usually the limit's like 2, so I order 2, And I'm glad I did it when I did, because right now finding a lot of this stuff is really hard. So I've got a few systems to build. They're not for any customers. When they're built, I'll offer them for sale if people want to buy them. And that's kind of the direction I'm taking the channel, because what's ended up happening is I've had people ordering systems that have had to wait 3 to 5 months to get those systems, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to just build the system and say, here's what it is, and if you want to buy it, I'll ship it to you tomorrow. That seems to make a lot more sense. And if people want to modify it and say, well, I need more storage or I need more RAM, that's a quick change. It won't take 3 or 4 months. You know what I'm saying? But when I'm trying to do a build and a video needs to be edited, and if there's a problem or if there's other distractions such as repairs and other requirements of my time that pull me away, it's not fair to the customer to have to wait that length of time. So I think I'm just going to build what I want to build, and then customers that are interested can buy what I've built and ask me to modify it if necessary to specific needs. And then the turnaround time will be much, much better, and it'll be far less stress for me. So that's why I have all these parts. Carey, how are you enjoying the 3900X streamer that you built? I have a problem with the streaming computer, and that is when I turn it on, it won't, when I bring up OBS, which is the online open broadcast software that I use to broadcast here on YouTube, when I play any of my intros, they play in, like, see the way I'm moving my hand? They play like that. They play, pause, and I don't know why they do it. And I thought there was something wrong with the render, and I talked to my sister about it. And then I rebooted the machine, and it plays smooth. I turned it on today, went right into OBS, played an intro, same thing. move, pause, move, pause. Just hit start, restart, went right back into OBS, smooth. So I don't know what's going on. I think I'm going to have to do a reinstall of Windows 10, but in doing so I have to put all the software back on it again. And honestly, between just choosing to restart or wiping it and starting over, I'll just live with it. But I'm not happy with this. When it's restarted, it's fine. It's not noisy, and it runs relatively quickly. But the fact that it started doing that suggests to me that over the years that I have upgraded, remember this used to be an Intel system, and then I switched it to AMD, but I cloned the operating system. So I suspect through my own laziness, I have created, there's some piece of software or some change in the registry that is there because of something I did. And I don't know when I did it or how I did it. So the likelihood of me finding it to repair it, the amount of time that'll take, since I don't know where to even begin looking, it'll just be faster for me to do a nuke and pave. Wipe the whole thing out, reinstall Windows 10, put the OBS software, reconfigure that again. That's no big deal actually. I've got Microsoft Office I have to reinstall. I've got the CyberLink Power Director software I have to reinstall. All my project files, all that has to get backed up so I can restore it, put it back on. And to be honest, with all the work I've got going on, that can wait. So I'm not happy. I don't think it's a fault of the 3900X, but it's still something I'm dealing with that I would rather not deal with. And I'll get around to it. I also have a couple of Noctua fans I wanted to put in the 200R case because I got the ugly brown ones. I upgraded the fans on the 200R to the Noctuas. And I did that to reduce noise. But every time I look in the case, I see those ugly brown fans and they upset me. I don't like looking at them. So I got two black Noctua fans and I haven't even had time to open up and change the fans. Because there's a front fan and a rear fan. It'll probably take 10 minutes, but it just feels like forever and I'm just not in the mood. But the fans are sitting in a box on top of the case for that day. Maybe I'll bring my nephew over and put him to work and make him do it. But I am happy with the video projects that I've been rendering here on the 3900X. The rendering software has never rendered this fast before. So there's that. So with that, again, thank you guys for the interaction. It's good seeing everybody again. We've got about 766 people watching with only 298 likes. You want to do a kind thing for another person? Click the thumbs up button for any YouTube video that you enjoy. It's a kind gesture. The internet doesn't see many kind gestures. And if you want to change that, be part of the change. And hit that thumbs up button if you enjoy content, not just from me, but I imagine you're watching other YouTube content creators. And if there are content creators that you enjoy, the only way you can let them know that is by clicking your mouse one time on that thumbs up. It's very easy to do, and it costs you nothing. And it's a kind gesture, which again is a rare thing on the internet. So thank you guys so much for participating in the chat. Thanks to all my friends in blue for squashing out the trolls that had their pathetic attempts at disruption. And thanks to everybody who has contributed. So a shout out to those folks one more time. Abdul Azim Patel, Mahilo Dasik, Essential Working Too Hard, Mira Ora, Lincoln Young contributed $5 and says, Carey, thanks for the build with Steve Bass. It really helps a newbie. Lincoln Young, oh, that was Lincoln Young. Thank you, Lincoln. Lance Ateo and Ken Bochenek. Ken contributed $20. Thank you, Ken. Nunman 1962 with a, wow, $50 contribution. I missed it. My apologies. Thank you for such a generous contribution. He says, Carey, missed most of today's video about the cases, but as far as your videos go, I'd like to see any other tech channel make videos that are unedited, uncut, and as honest as yours. You're the man. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you also see a value in it that I see. So thank you so much, and thank you for such a generous contribution to the channel. Geo Johnson contributes $5, says, thanks for keeping it real. This is the place where we get facts and not fluff. Thanks for all you do. Right on, Geo, and thanks for being a part of it. Bearpaw with a £2 contribution says, where do you get the Ncase from? The Ncase, the letter N like Nancy, just type in Ncase. It's not two words, it's one word. The letter N and the word case in Google will take you to the website. Madi, thank you so much for your contribution, $20. A good friend of the channel, John Wilson. John, thank you so much. John also made a large contribution earlier this month, which was unexpected and very much appreciated. And if you guys see John in the chat room, be sure that you show John full appreciation and respect. Because of him, I'm able to have some video content I would not otherwise have. We'll just leave it at that. So John, thank you, brother. George Regaldo with $20. Thank you so much. Brendan Looney, Madi Yoel with more $20 contributions. That's like a total of $60 from Madi today. Thank you, as always, my good friend Madi. Anthony Fuentes Navarro with $5. Thank you, Anthony. Adam Burdick, and finally Ramsey Amwardi with the first contribution today. Thank you guys again for all of your support. Michael Unconquo contributed $5. Thank you, Michael. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me. There's a link that Jeff Ryman just put in for ncases.com, where you can go to learn more if you want to purchase one. Links to the Lian Li cases are already in the video notes. I will add the Ncase link to the video notes as well. In the meantime, I will see you all, ideally I will see you tomorrow, and thank you so much for watching. We're going to go once more back to, we're going to do a couple of intros here to showcase the fantastic work and creativity that my sister is doing. Please enjoy these. They're called intros, but we're going to use them as outros, and we're going to play about 7 of them. Here we go.